Okay, we have recording. And so, hey everyone, I'm Dr. Shayna.
Coach Caroline.
And we are going to be discussing diabetes mellitus type 2 today, or you might know this as metabolic sensitivity, or excuse me, metabolic syndrome and insulin sensitivity or insulin insensitivity. Okay, so we kind of want to get into the nitty gritty of some of this because it's a 100% preventable disease that is thoroughly prevalent in the United States of America, and I believe also other westernized cultures that just eat nutritionless, toxic waste food.
Yeah, it's rampant
Rampant
and growing.
Yeah, and if we don't get control of diabetes anytime in the near future, in just a short period of time, chronic kidney disease, which is associated with diabetes type 2, will be a leading cause of death in this country, higher than iatrogenic causes, in fact, which is number 3, which is caused from correct use of conventional medicine as we know it today. So that's pretty scary if you ask me as a doc.
Yeah, and you know, we were just looking at commercials the other day and how many pharmaceuticals are just being thrown out there, and the adverse effects, the side effects of all of those aren't even being considered as being far worse than what you can do to correct it on your own.
Bladder cancer being one of those, in fact, because one of the medications that's commonly used, it's quite expensive. It actually comes from like a giant lizard. I'm forgetting the name of it, but basically what it does is it takes all the extra sugar that you have in your blood and you pee it out. So it sits in your bladder, and you're also at high risk of getting yeast infections and bacterial infections because you're not supposed to have that much sugar in your pee, which is a sign of being diagnosed diabetic, is like you have a ton of protein and a ton of sugar in your urine. But this is like mechanism of like, okay, we got to get it out of the blood because there's too much there. So let's get it out of the body, whatever way seems beneficial. And by the way, those drugs are quite expensive and they are name brand only currently. So don't worry.
No generic option.
No generic options.
Yeah. You know, and so many of those things, you know, the whole blood sugar issue with people, there's so many other things that come into play that happen in the body before, you know, as precursors. ADHD, ADD is a blood sugar issue, adrenal failure, anxiety, bedwetting, being bipolar, levels of depression, infertility, migraines, peripheral neuropathy, all of, you know, that and so many other things are blood sugar issues that are easily corrected with a little bit of supplementation and a diet correction. And you don't need to deal with these things anymore.
Yeah. Another big illness that's super common is atherosclerosis, which is plaque buildup in your arteries. And the way one of my mentors talked about sugar, high amounts of sugar in your blood, is it's like battery acid to your blood vessels. And so it's actually really smart of our body to create these plaques that are basically bandages over these ulcerations, these wounds that this high amount of blood sugar is causing in our blood vessels. It's actually very innately intelligent. Body says, damage, let's create a Band-Aid so we're not having a problem anymore and move forward with our life. And then before you know it, you're 80% clogged up artery with atherosclerosis and you're at high risk for having a heart attack.
Right. And then, you know, and then we can go down the cholesterol route a different day. But it all, you know, works in together. The body makes its own cholesterol, you know, for a reason. And then it's in the blood, just like you said, with the sugars. Well, we got to fix it. It's at a designated level that's too high. Designated by who? Designated so that you can be prescribed a pharmaceutical, and it puts you into a category. And we don't want to be in those categories. We want to be out of the category. So what are some of the things that you see that you put into play to get people out of that box?
Oh my God, fiber is huge. Fiber is like my number one go-to, because what does fiber do? It's like the mop and broom that sops up everything, and it helps you poop it out of your body. And so you're not actually recycling all the stuff your body's not using. And so fiber is one of the tools, but there's actually two types of fiber: insoluble and soluble.
Soluble.
And you need both. And where do you get these from? Mostly plants, actually. Animal products don't have them. I'm not anti-animal products. I think everything in moderation. But if you're not eating fiber, and in an ideal world, we would be getting 30 to 40 grams per day. And I know that's a lot. Our ancestors used to eat 80 grams of fiber per day. So compared to our ancestors, I think 40 grams is doable. You really have to be incredibly mindful about it. But man, your whole life will be much better if you actually have more fiber. The average American currently consumes about 10 to 15 grams of fiber, which is problematic. And that's why we poop once every 3 days, and that's considered normal and healthy.
Right. And it all comes down basically to convenience and having everything already prepared and processed for you. So, we have this great processing piece in our body, the digestive system. And that's what it's there for, to break down. Too many people are either on you're on a processed food diet out of convenience. So everything's coming prepackaged. So that sodium level is going to be higher than what you're really needing. So you're either doing that, or you're like, oh, I'm cutting out sodium. And so you're way low on it, but you've got to have that sodium in there to build up the hydrochloric acid so that you can start the whole process, the body process of breaking down food and bringing in the nutrients and helping that fiber do what it's supposed to do. But we don't have a society anymore, it seems, that frequents the produce section of the grocery store or grows it themselves. And so just the whole food chain, one of the things that I teach people is to shop the outside of the store. Don't even go up and down the aisles. There's nothing in there that you need for the most part, but start in that produce section. And that's where you're going to help find a lot of that fibrous, those fibrous foods that we need.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of shopping the perimeter as well. And, I only go into the aisles if I specifically am looking for something on my list or a meal, that I'm not getting distracted by shiny labels and catchphrases and they put cereals at a certain eye level for kids to be able to say, Mom, I really want this. Can I get it? And it's just like 100% sugar and food dye. So you avoid that. And I don't know if you noticed this, Carolyn, but during the pandemic and when it hit in March, yeah, sure, dry goods were out, but you know what wasn't empty? The produce section. So people were like, oh, we're going to run out of food. I'm like, I'm not sure what food you're eating, but it seems like the food I'm eating primarily is plentiful at this moment. So,
right. There's something to be said about shelf stable products.
Right.
And so if it can stay on the shelf for that long, how long is it going to take you to break it down?
Oh, yeah.
How many chemicals and preservatives are in that box of fill in the blank that now your body has to go through all of these processes to identify, put to use, and get rid of?
Yeah, I have a mentor. She used to carry around a McDonald's Happy Meal that she bought like 8 years ago. It's probably getting close to like 10 or 12 years now at this point. And it literally is just dried up. There's no mold. There's no rotting. There's no decay. The French fries, the burger bun, the burger itself.
Even the apple slices will not turn brown or mold. Not even kidding you.
That just like so disturbs me. And also at the same time, I want to drop in here about low socioeconomic status and the fact that food banks are packed full of expired bakery goods from your local grocery store. And that's what we're giving our lower socioeconomic class families. And that's what they're feeding their children, and they're eating too. And diabetes runs rampant in lower socioeconomic classes because they don't have enough money. And this is like one of the parts of the system that like really speaks to my heart and soul, is because it's not fair. It's not fair that if you don't make enough money in your single parent home, that you now have, this is the choice you have. And you know, it's not like we can't rise up out of poverty, but it is difficult to do. Not impossible, but difficult. And it doesn't help when the systems in place keep people down at that level. And so I just want to bring a little credence to that, knowing that that is a problem and there is a solution that we can move forward in. And, you know, the system needs to be fixed too. So I definitely understand, and not trying to discriminate or judge people based on their choices, but wanted to provide high quality information for people out there that do have a decision and can make a choice to say, maybe I'm going to choose collard greens today over just a piece of bread, right?
One of the things I work with a lot of people on is, you know, gluten is the gobstopper of all things, and trying to get people off of gluten, wheat, soy, rye, barley, oats, corn, just because of a lot of different, you know, the GMOs out there, that, you know, the grain in of itself is not the problem. It's what we have done to it over the years, with pesticides and insecticides and all of these toxins that then build up in our system. So it's not the grain's fault itself. I don't want to lead that message, but we are just so full of stuff that our body has to deal with. And our cells are just scanning all of the time, looking for things that it needs to go and repair and go and fix or help out or whatever, that our bodies are taxed. So the more pure of a product that you're putting into your body, the more in its natural state. Look at all of the ingredients on a package of bread.
Right.
Okay.
Sara Lee. Let's look at Sara Lee bread. Yeah.
You know, but you can substitute, you can still have your sandwich with nitrate and nitrite free meats if you want. You can still have your sandwich, but use lettuce. Use some romaine lettuce as, you know, the thing to hold it together. You know, just making easy substitutions like that to just start cleaning up the digestive system in of itself, because then you automatically start eliminating a lot of that sugar buildup of processed sugars.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to say in my profession as a naturopathic doctor that everything starts in the gut. And, you know, you've touched on this already. You have to have proper stomach acid or hydrochloric acid to be able to break down the minerals. As one of my mentors used to say, salad is hard rocks, cold rocks, and that's what you want to eat. You want to eat salad, that's great. But if you have not enough stomach acid, you're just putting rocks into your body, and that's not going to do anybody any good. And so there are ways that we can do this. So like, I'm a huge collard green fan, and maybe you've heard of massaged kale salads or massaged collard greens, but if you massage them, it helps to break it down so it's a little bit more digestible. This is why we put oil and vinegar on salad, is to make it broken down, make it easier for our body to digest. So humans throughout time have been very innovative in the way we think about things. And this was like before scientific hypothesis and scientific theory was even like around. We figured this out, and to be better humans, like, oh my God, we learned how to cook our food, and like our brains got so much bigger, you know?
Yeah. You know, and one of the things is we don't even realize what is all in our food.
Right.
Like food should just be food.
Right.
It's food, not a whole bunch of stuff into something to create a food.
Correct. I've been calling it food like food, and really that's an incorrect statement as well, because it's not really food. It's manufactured, processed goods to be sold to the consumer. And I like this quote from Michael Pollan, and we've all heard this at least once. If your great grandma doesn't recognize it, it's not food. So would your great grandparents recognize, you know, that meal you just packed for your child to take to school? Gummy bears, pudding, and ham sandwich.
Fruit snacks that don't even have fruit in them, but they're shaped like fruit.
Shaped like fruit, maybe kind of taste like fruit. I always thought that the cherry flavored when I was growing up, I was like, man, it tastes like cough syrup. It like doesn't taste like cherries. So I used to not like cherries because that's what I thought cherries tasted like. And then I had cherries and I was like, ooh, that's like artificial flavor is what I didn't like.
Oh no. So you had mentioned something at the beginning, metabolic syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing in your world?
So with metabolic syndrome, a person, and I want to just like dispel this right off the bat, a person can be skinny and have metabolic syndrome. There's a really great TED talk by an ER physician who actually talks about this, and a story that he did to a woman who was overweight and how hurtful he was to her. And then turns out he ends up with metabolic syndrome. And this man is a very big mover and exercise guy, gym all the time, blah, blah, blah. But how was he eating? Not well.
Right.
ER physicians are overworked, underpaid, blah, blah, blah. Stressed. Oh my God. Stress is a huge factor in metabolic syndrome because what does it do?
Right.
Releases cortisol. Cortisol says we got to run from the bear, break down glycogen, which is storage of glucose. And then that goes straight into our bloodstream so we can run from the bear, the metaphorical bear,
right.
Watch the news. So we are literally living a lifestyle that is inducing our physiology to be on high alert and like go fast into metabolic syndrome. And so again, what that looks like is your cholesterol is all wonk, your endurance is out of shape, and oftentimes it comes back to how you're eating. And yes, you know, we have choices and don't want to put stigma, but like really food does matter. And if you're not eating vegetables, your body is not going to function well. You will be severely mineral deficient, and you need minerals in so many. I wanted to try and find how many places calcium is used in the body. I know magnesium is used in like 300 different enzymatic reactions in the body. Where do we get magnesium? From green vegetables.
Right. Right. The, use nutrient deficiencies, omega-3s. They're called essential fatty acids for a purpose because we can't make them ourselves. We have to put them into our bodies. Omega-3s, calcium, chromium, vanadium, selenium, niacin, and then all of the phytonutrients that are found in plants.
Yeah, that are antioxidant and really good for inflammation. And that's a huge part of metabolic syndrome is it's just like rampant inflammation because you're ramping up the wrong you're ramping up omega-6 arachidonic acid, which is super inflammatory. You just have like everything's just like off balance in various ways.
Yeah, and the so many things, like I said earlier, there's so many different pieces of a blood sugar issue, cardiomyopathy, hypothyroidism, diarrhea. It's not like, oh, I just ate something that, these things do not just happen overnight. They are a build up of poor sleep, of stress, lack of hydration, overexertion, a lot. I don't know if you ever saw the movie, I just lost it. Gross Anatomy. No. Yeah. Gross Anatomy. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't even know if you were born yet, but anyway, but, exercise is a great way to deal with stress. Okay. But like you just said, the glycogen stores. So if you're a person that holds a lot of water in your muscles, and then you go run some sprints, or you just run and you do some high intensity exercise to relieve your stress, well, where does all of that go?
Right.
Got to go somewhere. Yes, exercise is a great way to deal with stress. Is it the only way? No. A lot of mindset stuff, a lot of meditation, even just walking is another way to help alleviate stress without putting your body into a heightened stress situation.
Right.
Because when your brain says, oh, we're running, it doesn't matter if you're running from something or not. It doesn't know that. I mean, we look way back into our caveman days then, where if you're running, you're flighting.
Yeah,
and
totally.
So then you just keep that hyper-reactive state up, and your body is always in this state.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We got to relax.
You got to relax and like get good sleep. That is, in my opinion, the most important foundation. Is everything else kind of falls into place. You have more energy to move your body, to make a meal plan, so you're actually making sure to get your meals in a day rather than just like on the go and rushed. That's a whole nother conversation. Is like how are you engaging with your food? Are you sitting in your car in traffic, stressed out eating? Are you sitting at your desk trying to work while you're eating? You know, what are you doing there? But we've digressed a bit.
Well, you know, and I think, but it comes back to, what is the purpose?
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of food?
To nourish our body.
To nourish our bodies, to give us energy to complete the task that we have to do for the day, whatever that task may be. Now, the vast majority of us are not out farming. You know, we're not out hand hoeing the rows, planting, foraging, all of these things. So we have a much less physical life than our ancestors did. Mm-hmm. So the purpose of our food still holds true. But then when we sit down, what is our mental relationship with that food that we're about to eat? Where are we as a holistic health coach? I work with people in assigning their nutrition, because what is the goal? Am I full of inflammation? I'm full of aches and pains. I'm not absorbing. Okay, so we need to look at what we're eating and have a purpose of reducing inflammation,
right?
Of bringing peace into our body, not of angst, not of stress. You immediately have stress, your digestion goes,
exactly.
You know, and so then you're not comfortable, and then you make bad decisions. So, you know, and that hormones are just rampant, and we've been falsely told about fats, but fats control hormones.
They sure do.
Cortisol is a
steroid hormone.
You know, something that can be controlled.
Right. Well, and that's the tricky part too, is, you know, the high cholesterol, it's like, well, which one of your cholesterol markers is high? I want to see the ratio of HDL to LDL, and really it should be VLDL, which is your very low density lipoproteins, which are the most concerning. And again, but if your HDL is up high enough, I'm like slightly less concerned. And, you know, it's just like, okay, let's add some more fiber and things should be turning around relatively quickly. In fact, I expect a change within about a month or so. And so like we have a lot more control, and that's not even the right word I like to use, but like a better way to work with our dynamic body in a way that is most helpful for us to live our purpose, our function as a human being in this life, whatever that is for you or me, or like, you know, I love what I do and it sounds like you do too. So we get to live our life purpose and help others get well so they can live their life purpose.
Right.
One of the micronutrients that I was not familiar with in relation to type 2 diabetes was actually zinc. Zinc is a precursor to insulin production in the body. And apparently when we have high blood glucose, high blood sugar, and we're peeing out a lot of it, it actually excretes zinc with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so fascinating. So that's like part and parcel why diabetic people with type 2 diabetes end up with like more immune dysfunction too, because zinc is so important for our immune system.
Yanked out.
Exactly. So it's just like everything is coming together, and it's like, wow, like this is like big. And there's so many places we can come in and help to work with people that have diabetes and help them get well so they don't have it anymore.
Yeah. And you know, it's not coincidental how, you know, with our current pandemic situation and zinc and how much it comes into play. Right. So you look at the comorbidities with our pandemic situation, one of them being obesity, you know, and type 2 diabetes, and saying, okay, well, look, if we're throwing zinc in and vitamin D and bringing all of these things, so both of those things are helping your immune system. So you're not only helping your immune system, but you're also helping level out a lot of other systems in the body that all work together to create a healthy person. And zinc is one of those really neat things. I need to do some more studying, and I don't know if you know anything about allulose.
Mm-mm.
It is a sugar.
Oh,
It's a
yeah, it's like
sugar that
go ahead.
apparently it doesn't go into your bloodstream. It's the body like blocks it from going into the bloodstream, so it doesn't spike your blood sugar, and it's just excreted in your urine. So I've in the ketogenic world, I'm looking into all of these different options, and allulose keeps coming up. So I don't know if you've heard anything of it, but
I've heard about it more in like the pentose phosphate pathway, and this is like getting real nerdy. It's like we go into that state in our body when we have not enough. It's not enough glucose. I'm pretty sure when we're trying to like make ketones. That is interesting. I will have to look into that. That's
yeah,
always learning every day.
the next time. See, yeah. So what's something that you would like, what would be some of your first steps in working with somebody that either has gotten a diagnosis or they're thinking that, you know, maybe it's something in the family or what have you?
Right. I mean, my first step with the majority of my patients, unless they have a history of eating disorders, is to find out what their food intolerances are. And why that's important is because metabolic syndrome, diabetes, a whole slew of other inflammatory conditions start with a high toxic load. And what I mean by that is like you don't have symptoms of the diabetes until you reach a certain point in your body, and your body says, I can't deal with this anymore, and now I'm going to start expressing symptoms. And now you have glucose levels that are off the charts, and your A1C is through the roof. And so now, you know, maybe you're getting like dizziness and like your eyes are having effect, and you know that's not good. Those are really significant symptoms, in fact. Or maybe you're having peripheral neuropathy where like you can't feel your feet, and you're like banging on your feet on the floor, and you have ulcers on your feet because you can't feel them. And like I'm looking at that as a doc, and I'm like, dang, your feet don't look good. And you know, I try to keep myself contained, but food intolerance is like the first place I start to help reduce that toxic load in a person's body. That's the first spot, in addition to like supplementation when a person is very sick is necessary. You know, you've lived for this way for like what, 30 years, 15, 20, 40 years maybe. You know, we got to build your system up and give your body what it needs. So take out the trash, get rid of that food intolerance, give you some nutritional supplementation that may or may not be forever. That's to be determined with the individual person sitting in front of me. But we got to give your body that nutrition to begin with. Right. We go from there.
Yeah. And it's very similar to what I do too, where, but I tell them, this did not happen overnight. It didn't happen just in the last year or the last 2 years. This has been a developing situation, and it is not going to go away in 24 hours, in a week or anything. You know, the body has, the liver does some amazing things with detoxification, and it takes some time and it takes some dedication to creating a new lifestyle for yourself. So it is not a quick fix. And any pill that you that is thrown at somebody that says, okay, this is going to take care of it, is not getting to the root cause of the situation, and it is not taking care of it. It is keeping it in a box of allowable numbers,
right? And
which isn't helping.
The thing that scares me most about this is now a lot of endocrinologists and diabetes specialists are actually throwing insulin straight at type 2 diabetics, period. And in my brain, I'm like, okay, so they have insulin insensitivity, so you're putting more fuel on the fire, so they have to keep their sugars up. And so actually then they're going to need to have more insulin and more insulin and more insulin to combat the fact. But then if they have too much insulin, they have a risk of having what we call a hypo or hypoglycemia, where you drop your blood sugar so much that you can die. Like that's pretty high risk if you ask me. And the fact that insulin costs, which is a life-saving drug, especially for diabetics type 1 that do not have that ability, it's an amazing medication. But I really feel like we are shooting ourselves right in the foot by just like first out the door, give the diabetes type 2 patient with insulin. I'm like, that doesn't make sense physiologically. Why are we choosing this as the best drug? I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
Right. And anytime that there's a system that the body can do on its own, when everything is on board and operating properly, there shouldn't be a synthetic given to somebody.
No.
because the body can do it itself. It just needs a little bit of help. It doesn't need it replaced.
Correct. Exactly. We just that, and the body is innately intelligent. We talked about this last time, is like, we take out the trash, we give the body what it needs, and we get out of the way because the body will do the rest. I actually have a really great case of a woman in her 70s. Her fasting blood glucose when she was diagnosed was almost 400. Her A1C was 14.7. That's like crazy. Normal is like 5 to 5.3, 5.4, right? So you're kind of getting the idea of like what's considered normal blood glucose is less than 100. And in my world, I'd really like that to be about 80. And so within 6 months of her working with one of my mentors, I got to see, wow, her numbers are like down in like 200s, which is great. Okay, so 6 months, and we gave her vanadium and chromium, and we got her on some good fish oils, and worked with some other immune stuff as well. And she started making sure she was doing loops around her garden. So after she ate, loops around her garden. She doesn't have like a huge yard by any means, but like just these simple shifts. She has bread once a week instead of every day. That makes a big difference too. And she really gets to enjoy it, and she makes her own bread. So, and after about a year, her fasting glucose levels are between 100 and 120, which for a woman of her age, and for the duration in which she had diabetes, I'm guessing at least 30 years, this process was going on, if not longer, in her body. I'm pretty happy with that. Her A1C is 5.3 today. So,
and had she been on meds? Had she been on meds? She didn't do meds at all.
Her MD wanted to put her on, and she was like, oh my God, this drug, I looked at it, Victoza was the medication they wanted to put her on. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm very concerned. I don't like the side effects. What can I do? And she actually used to be a nurse. So she's very aware of the pharmaceutical industry, especially being a psych nurse. And she's just like, something must be better. And, she actually changed the tune of her MD, because her MD actually stands up at conferences. It's like, I have a patient. And the American Diabetic Association, their number one, lifestyle changes. And my friend, my patient, she is like the gold star of like just a couple shifts. And she was able to reverse her diabetes. Now, is she at risk? So we talk about in naturopathic medicine like a system of weakness. And so for my friend, her system of weakness is she tends towards diabetes. Okay, that's not bad or good. It's just like, okay, this is information. We know this about her. When you get sick, her blood sugar goes up. Okay, well, we understand why. That system was really taxed for a while. It's easy to kind of keep that tax system in place as a way for the body to deal with illness. And it's actually quite smart.
And the body will go to what it knows. It has a memory. And like you said, the number one thing is lifestyle change. And I think the biggest hardship that falls on us in today's world is we want it like this. Lifestyle change is hard. No doubt about it. It is hard. But the side effects of being solely on med, and maybe meds are needed. I'm not saying that, absolutely no. Every case is individually looked at, and it's always a choice. One thing I always want to let people know is that a prescription or a recommendation or a referral or any of that is always a choice. Yeah. And you have many choices, and sometimes those choices are overwhelming and need a little bit of understanding to go with them too. But lifestyle change is not for the short term. And I think that's one of the biggest things is, yes, it's number one, but I think the Diabetes Association will also say, but the fastest change is going to be, something else. So, but that is one of the things is getting your mind wrapped around that this is not a short-term thing. This has been developing for a while. And in order to have the rest of my life be looking like this, or this activity level, or the fill in the blank, there's going to be some changes that need to be made.
Right, exactly. And my friend stuck to those changes, and it's so noticeable. And something else about me and my practice is like, I do not like to focus on weight loss. because I feel like it's the wrong goal. And so for my friend, she was like 50 pounds or so overweight. And one of the consequences or side effects, you could say, of her making these subtle life differences and getting the blood sugar under control and much more manageable for her body to deal with is she had to go buy a whole new wardrobe because she lost so much weight. And like, you know, that was never the goal. The goal was just like, oh my God, I don't want to be on medication. I'm super motivated. I will do whatever you tell me to do. And what a cool side effect of for someone that's, you know, she didn't care. She loved how her body was, and which is really awesome to meet a patient where she's at that way. But then to have that be the case, you know, that was a pleasant surprise for her.
Yeah, I have these two models on my desk all of the time of what is, they both weigh the same. One is lean muscle and one is fat, and how much space they take up, and the difference of just a pound, and that it's not just about weight, but, you know, this is toxins.
Right.
This is toxins and unneeded stuff that, you know, I mean, there is a purpose to it. I'm not saying, you know, but it's a good reminder that the scale is a measurement. It's not the measurement, and it can help drive health, but it's not the only piece of the health puzzle.
Exactly. And man, yeah, the nutritional deficiency components. What else did I want to talk about with diabetes? And yeah, we talked about arsenic. That's what I wanted to talk about, because the healthy grain is rice, and rice actually is packed full of arsenic just because it's in our water. And so one of the new theories in environmental medicine is that actually diabetes type 2 is caused from chronic long-term exposure to small amounts of arsenic daily. Boom, 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 boom. And arsenic is poisonous. There's no form of arsenic that our body needs, wants, desires. We don't need it.
Right.
And so when you have daily exposure, because you're eating rice, or because you're drinking well water, or, you know, any of the other places that arsenic may be because you live next to a mine, or blah, 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 this is a problem. And what's really great is arsenic actually leaves the body relatively quickly. But the problem is the daily chronic exposure that becomes problematic. And arsenic will kill you in large amounts. But we don't really know what it does in the short term. And so one of my mentors, he's actually written an entire book that just came out last year, Joseph Pizzorno, on specifically type 2 diabetes and arsenic exposure.
Wow.
So this is like a brand new area, and it's rightful. But in addition to arsenic, which doesn't really store in the fat tissue, but we've got PCBs, endocrine disruptors, what other
all those goodies. Well, and then
plasticizers, you know,
and if you're talking about you know, yes, arsenic will leave the body quickly if it can get through the liver. That's not all fully packed of fill in the blank. It's like an air filter on the car, where it'll suck in all of the dust and all of the everything to block it from going on. But if you don't clean that filter out or replace it, and the liver's pretty cool because it can regenerate itself. But, you know, if you don't have a clean system running, the things that should go through you quickly and not build up can't.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. And that goes back to my thought about the toxic load. Is like, that's my number one goal, is to get that down so the body can actually run more efficiently with the energy you're giving it.
And there's so many things that you need other than, you know, yes, the nutrition is key, but it's the right pieces of nutrition. The whole sleep aspect is so huge. The body does so much healing while you're sleeping. That's why when you're sick, what do you want to do?
Sleep.
You want to sleep. You know, don't go to work when you're sick. Go to sleep so your body can work and heal itself.
That's right. I mean, we just live in such an interesting world, and maybe we'll see how this goes with the pandemic. But, you know, being at home has afforded people a lot more time because they're no longer commuting. And so for me, I feel like I've actually gotten a healthier lifestyle because I actually am not rushing out the door at 6 a.m. with my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I can have a little bit of a slower morning and, you know, work out and or meditate if I'm creating time in the morning for that.
Sure.
And I feel like I'm overall in better mental, emotional, physical shape just because I'm not so stressed out driving in traffic.
Sure.
And this may not be true for everybody. There are those of us that are still having to commute. But you know, big corporations are willing to work with you. They don't want to lose your productivity. And that's one of the things that's always fascinated me about some of the statistics on health is like the cost of loss of productivity is billions of dollars.
Right.
So let's give our people stand-up desks and more ergonomic office situations, and maybe our healthier options at cafeterias at some of the big tech industries. Like maybe Pepsi shouldn't be the only thing that they get. Just a thought.
Yes. One of my clients actually works at the hospital, and she sends me pictures of what she's choosing to make for lunch there. And she's like, well, I don't need to send you a picture because I've sent you 6 pictures and those are the best things I've got an option for in the hospital cafeteria.
Right.
She's like, so, you know, so we're doing the soup thing again and some cottage cheese on the side or, you know, whatever. But
and see, hospitals are where people go where they're sick to get well. And so again, this doesn't make sense that we would be feeding them, you know, excuse my language, but trash food.
Right.
And, you know, I heard a story about a patient who had a heart attack. And so he was in the cardiovascular ward of a major hospital somewhere. And after he got done from his bypass surgery, you know what they gave him? Big old steak. There was no vegetables, steak and mashed potatoes or steak and a baked potato, something like that. And I'm like, yeah, you know, you need your protein, you need your carbs, but you also need your minerals and your other vegetables. So where are those? Because that's how we got here.
Yeah. It's funny. One of my friends is, she was a air flight nurse in the Air Force and a registered nurse. And then she went on and became an ND as well.
Oh, cool.
And she's like, you know, it just finally made so much sense with the vitamins and minerals, because when we've got people that are in a comatose state, what are we keeping them alive on?
TPN, which doesn't have, it's mineral deficient.
So what does what are the bare minimums that the body needs?
Yep, and that's what they give them.
So
I forget what TPN, total body nutrition or something like that.
But yeah.
And actually chromium deficiency is hugely associated because there's no chromium in it. I actually have a family member that's been on TPN for well over a decade at this point because of a really severe chronic illness. And she's developed type 2 diabetes because of it, because of the chromium deficiency. And she cannot get her docs to put it in, even though chromium is well established at this point to be associated with diabetes. It's fascinating. It is so interesting, the world we live in and like where we choose to spend money as a society and where we are just like, chromium's optional. You don't actually really need that to survive.
Right. And it just goes to an education base of what we've been taught. You know, once they created that stinking food pyramid and that, can we just flip that puppy over or invert it or whatever you would want to call it?
And put vegetables on the bottom. How about?
Yes. I just, you know, and one of the things also with aspartame and back to sugars and the levels of liver cancer, and I'm sorry, bladder cancer, you know, the brain doesn't recognize artificial sugars. It doesn't know what to do with it. So that's another one of those toxic buildups. I have a family member that has been dealing with bladder cancer for a number of years, and all she drank was Diet Coke.
Oof. Yeah, the artificial sweeteners are no good.
And in teas, you want to talk about arsenic? In teas
are huge. Absolutely, you're totally right. Tea, actually, like Camellia sinensis, green tea, black tea, white tea, any of that all is packed full because how are they grown?
because it's
in a
right.
field full of water that's packed full of arsenic. It's so sad because I do love a good cup of tea.
Yeah. I really love some. I have a bunch of loose leaf wellness teas that are specifically put together for specific things. And yeah, North America is not the place to grow a lot of these things.
No, unfortunately,
The water systems and
nor is China, because that's where tea originally comes from historically, and unfortunately, China has not done a good job of taking care of their land either, like we haven't in the U.S. So,
and the air.
not to mention the air quality. Yikes! See, it's just like it's
Minor detail.
yeah, you pick your battles, and one of the rules I like to teach my patients about is the 80-20 rule. And that's 80% of the time I am doing the best I can to take care of myself, ways that make me feel good, make me feel nourished. And that's, how I'm eating, how I'm moving, what I'm watching, reading, blah, 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 all the things, making sure I'm drinking enough water, getting enough sleep. It's fun. It's nice to stay up sometimes and have a couple alcoholic beverages with some friends and stay up until midnight. That's fun.
Right.
You get to enjoy your life. And the other piece is like, especially with people that have diabetes, they're like, oh, but I have to have a cheat day. I'm like, no, fuck cheat days. No more cheat days. That phrase is self-hate disguised.
Cheating, yeah.
And that
cheating
actually
only hurts yourself. Yeah.
It makes more stress in the body. So I am not a fan of saying cheat day. Throw that out of your language vocabulary. And I actually said this to a patient recently. I was like, you just said a bunch of self-deprecating things. I need you to say 3 nice things about yourself. Can you do that? And she just looked at me. She was like, what? I'm like, no, I'm actually serious.
Yeah. Yep.
It matters that we talk to ourselves.
It absolutely. The most important voice that you listen to is your own. And it really only matters your own thoughts. What other people think about you is none of your business.
That's right. It really is none of my business.
You don't need that in your life. You're the only one that has to live with yourself for the rest of your life. But yeah, mindset is such a big part of it. And and we have a lot of generational stuff, and generational stuff is not the same as genetic stuff. No. And if you come from a family that has a couple cases here and there of fill in the blank, it doesn't have to be diabetes, but fill in the blank, that does not mean that you are going to be in that same box. And it also doesn't mean that when you are in your, late 20s, early 30s, when people start going, oh, I'm taking on all of the characteristics of Grandma Sue, and this is just what's going to happen to me. Those words have now set you in motion.
Yeah.
But you can come back.
What you believe is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just say, okay, this was Grandma Sue's predicament. I am not Grandma Sue. I am me. I have these functions and I have this possibility. And so now I'm going to take the measures that are going to stop me from continuing down the road that Grandma Sue went on. And I'm going to make the changes. I'm going to change my lifestyle to make it better for me and my children, so that their Grandma Caroline is not, part of that story. It's making a new story. And like you said, with the socioeconomic struggles, the generational curses of fill in the blank, it does not have to be that way.
It does not have to be that way. And we get to be the creators of our destiny, not our genes, not our parents, not our circumstances, not a diagnosis that we just got that might be really scary. Like, you have type 2 diabetes, and some people are really overwhelmed and they're like, oh my God, I can't do anything. And I want you to know that there's a lot we can do, actually. And I want to provide hope that anything is possible. And if you want to make the changes and you need help, both Carolyn and myself are here to help support you on your health journey so you can live your purpose.
Yes. Everything is figure-outable. It's a great book, but it is too. Everything is figure-outable.
It is. It absolutely is. And so let's wrap up here. And what can we talk about next week?
Oh gosh. Let's see. Are we close to Christmas?
We
Well,
are.
we still have a couple more weeks of Christmas.
Yeah.
How about sleep?
Sleep. Oh my God. Yes. Let's talk about sleep. What a
How
good
about
one.
sleep? Okay. You got it. All right. Sleep next week.
All right. Well, good chatting with you, Carolyn. We'll see you next week.